The conflict between the neighboring Thailand and Cambodia has been ongoing for several days now and is beginning to take on the characteristics of a genuine regional war. At first glance, it appears to be a traditional clash between two neighboring states over border issues rooted in colonial history. The state border between Thailand and Cambodia was drawn in the early 20th century by France, which, as we know, controlled Indochina at the time. But in reality, this is what is known as a new type conflict, connected to the global confrontation between the United States and China. The issue is not about who will control the territory around the Asian temple. The issue is that Thailand is the most important US ally, and Cambodia is an ally of the People's Republic of China. China is building its own bases on Cambodian territory. The United States is supplying Thailand with advanced weapons. And it is clear that the outcome of this conflict will determine who has greater influence over the entire region. This can be compared to the Russian-Ukrainian war. Ukraine is supported by the West and hopes for continued military assistance from the United States, while Russia is supported by China. China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi has emphasized that China will not allow Russia to lose in its confrontation with Ukraine. This situation also resembles events in the Middle East. Israel is the most important US ally in the region, a country that receives the latest American weapons. Iran, which effectively controls all proxy forces aimed at destroying Israel, is itself ready for a direct conflict with the Jewish state. Iran is also a key ally of China in the region because China purchases nearly all of Iran's oil, thus enable this regime to maintain a certain level of stability and even expand its military program. Observers note that the current fighting between Thailand and Cambodia is taking place near the Mekong River, which could serve as a route for Chinese supplies to the Cambodian army and for establishing a future Chinese military base in the Sikhan, I cannot pronounce this, the area to control the South China Sea in case of a larger conflict between United States and China. And it is also worth mentioning that China's allies in the region include Laos and Myanmar. Laos has long been ruled by a post-communist government aligned with Beijing since the 1970s. In Myanmar, power is held by generals who are pariahs to the democratic world but maintain special relations with the leadership of both the People's Republic of China and the Russian Federation. So when we say that Russia exhausting war against Ukraine was just the opening shot of what would define the 21st century as an era of continuous wars for influence between Washington and Beijing, we were not mistaken. Former Speaker of the US House of Representatives Nancy Pelosi, during her visit to Taiwan, emphasized that we have entered an era of struggle between democracies and authoritarianism. But the leader of this struggle on the authoritarian side is not Putin's self-absorbed Russian Federation, it is the People's Republic of China under the confident leadership of Xi Jinping. China hopes not merely to create a bipolar world, but to significantly reduce US global influence. For that purpose, Russia, acting as China's proxy, is now waging an unending war in Ukraine, attempting to weaken both the European Union and the United States, which, from the perspective of Beijing and Moscow, must be stripped of any political and economic influence in Europe. In the Pacific region, In Southeastern Asia, China has its own allies who will also be ready to undermine American influence in every country still oriented towards the United States. As we know, the conflict with Cambodia has already led to a serious domestic political crisis in Thailand. The crisis resulted in the resignation of the Thai Prime Minister, who had tried to resolve the conflict through talks with Cambodian dictator Hun Sen, whose son is now the formal head of the Cambodian state. A conversation between the now former Prime Minister Shinawatra and Hun Sen, during which she treated the Cambodian leader respectfully, led to her resignation, also because she effectively admitted to holding a different position to the Thailand-Cambodia situation than the Thai military, who are known not only to have the greatest influence on the country's political system and full support from the royal palace, but also to have established their own level of relationship with the United States. Washington relies on the Thai army as a force capable of stabilizing the volatile Southeast Asia region. It is also worth noting that the new Thailand-Cambodia conflict began to escalate almost immediately after China managed to secure special cooperation with Vietnam, following the appointment of General To Lam, a former head of Vietnam's state security services, as the new leader of that post-communist country. It is obvious that replacing Vietnam's leader with someone more orthodox and more inclined to cooperate with Beijing rather than Washington also convinced China that it could begin advancing against American positions in the region. Thus, a conflict that had lasted only several days so far could turn into yet another endless war. We could end up with several such wars: an endless war in Ukraine with no prospect of resolution, an endless war in the Middle East with no prospect of resolution, and a new endless war in Southeast Asia, also with no real prospect of resolution. And believe me, with each passing year and in more places, there will be more and more such wars. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day. Slava Ukraini!